1, write the equation that goes to the given point and slope. If you see those words, point and slope, you should be using your point-slope formula. The y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. That one. And then we have our point, that would be our x1, y1, and our m. Put those three numbers in. So y minus our y1, 8, equals our slope, 1/2, times x minus our x1, 8. And then distribute and solve for y. We could add 8 to both sides, and our equation would be y equals 1/2 x minus 1. Questions on Antonio? I have stuff for you. And you need to take your test. Alright, look at the course calendar really quickly. I think there were extras on our, so you can grab them from one of the tables over there. You guys didn't get these either. Okay. You need one. You got that. Okay. Okay. On the course calendar, so we're going to start our next unit today. This is going to be the last thing that goes in this quarter. So if your grade is not where you want it to be, you need to retake Unit 5, the variation. You need to retake/finish the Unit 6, the factoring. And you need to do well on this upcoming quiz and test at the beginning of March. So keep that in mind. I'll have deadlines soon, not today. This unit is on quadratics. So a lot of the stuff we were just doing in factoring, and basically everything from this unit, those of you going on to Algebra 2, this is what you're going to start with. So you need to know this stuff so you have a good foundation for Algebra 2. Your quiz date is Monday, March 4th, and then there's a holiday on that Tuesday, so then I don't see you guys again until that Thursday, and that's when your test is, March 7th, and then the flex days after that. Please come see me as soon as possible if any of this is not making sense. And you need to finish your Unit 6 test by the next test. So by Thursday, March 7th. Questions on that? So we're not going to do everything that you would learn in Algebra 2. We're just going to go over some of the basics. One, there are multiple ways to solve quadratics. One of them is using square roots. And this works if you have a quadratic that looks something like this, where you don't have the x term in the middle. So when we were factoring and we had trinomials, the x squared term, the x term, and then the constant, those were all quadratics that we were factoring. But to solve them, when they look like this, we're going to be using these steps. Isolate the x squared. What does that mean? Okay. Move to 49 to get x squared by itself. So add 49 to both sides. Then we're going to take the square root of both sides. I didn't even do it there. I'm going to do that over. Now, the difference here is normally you take the square root, you get one number, it's a positive number. But because our quadratics are going to measure zeros, we'll talk about that later, there's a positive and usually a negative version of the same thing. So when you do this, it's going to be not only this positive 7, but also negative 7. And you're going to write it in curly brackets as a set notation. Or you could write it as x equals, this symbol is called plus or minus, but there's both of them combined, 7. So my curly brackets aren't perfect, but imagine curly brackets, one going one way and one going the other. Questions on this process so far? A lot of the ones we do, we're going to get nice numbers like this. Some of them you won't, but we'll get to that later. So let's start with 1. Similar to the one we just did, how would we isolate the x squared? Yes. And then take the square root of both sides. If at any point you're not sure what the square root is in your calculator, use this button. It's in blue. If you don't have your calculator, go grab that. If you hit second and then x squared, you'll get, and then put in whatever number, you'll get that answer. It will not give you the negative, but you have to also know to put the negative. So x equals, you can put it either way, plus or minus 4, or negative 4 and positive 4. When you do this, make sure it's least to greatest if you're not writing them together. Questions on that one? Okay. 2 is going to be similar, so let's skip to 3. How would I isolate the x squared there? Now, when we take the square root of both sides here, go ahead and do that. Tell me what happens. Make sure it's negative 25, not positive 25. You get an error. You get no solution. You can't take the square root of a negative number in this class. So this is no solution for now. And when you get to algebra 2 / later on, you'll learn how to actually solve that. We're not doing that in this class. Alright, questions so far? Actually, this one needs to be inside. Sorry. How would we isolate number 4? -7 is going to give us, we take the square root of both sides, what would that give us? And -9, plus or minus 9. So remember to put both. If you don't put both, you're going to be missing part of your answer. Alright, number 5, if we subtract 7 and take the square root, what would that give us? -3, and then our solution would be now, you can get no solution by accident if you solve incorrectly. So you could also graph this to see what that would look like, but that'll make more sense when we actually get to the solution. So you still have to solve it. we'll do 6 and then we'll get into some of these other ones. So if I add 5, x squared equals 1. And then if I take the square root of both sides, positive and negative, plus or minus 1. So make sure you have both. Right, 6, how would we isolate the x squared? And that would give us 9. So if we take the square root of both sides, plus or minus 3, positive and negative 3. Right. Number 8, when we divide both sides, what will we get? Number 8, 49. We take the square root, is that a whole number? It is 7, but plus or minus 7, both positive and negative. How would we solve 9?
Multiply.
Multiply what?
3/4.
4/3. So you can either divide both sides by 3/4 or multiply by 4/3, whichever you choose. Go ahead and do that in your calculator. Tell me what that is. Alpha y equals. Alpha y equals will give you the fraction bar. So whether you divided or multiplied, you should have got 16 as long as you put everything incorrectly. When we take the square root, what would that answer be?
Plus or minus 4.
Plus or minus 4. Make sure you're using curly brackets also. These next ones aren't going to be nice numbers. So let's isolate 10. How would we do that? Think about it like a regular equation. You're trying to get x squared by itself. So add 5 to both sides. Oh, I lied. This one will maybe with this one. We take the square root of both sides. But plus or minus. And remember that when I'm saying that, I'm not saying it's like a either or option. It's both. It's just the name of the symbol is or minus, plus or minus. I was trying to skip to one of the ones that would go to decimal, but I don't think that one is. And there is that one. Do we have questions on 11 or 12 or want to see either of those? Going to the back. Let's do.
Okay.
Let's do 16 really quickly before lunch. So if we were doing 16, we would add 16 to both sides. Divide both sides by 9. This can't be simplified, but when we take the square root of both sides, what we're going to do is take the square root of each piece individually. So that would be the square root of 16 over the square root of 9. Sorry, I have to take this from brackets. What would that be?
4 over 3.
4 over 3. So plus or minus 4 over 3. Sometimes you'll get problems like that. Sometimes you'll get decimals. You would not want to put plus or minus 1.3 repeating. Leave it as a fraction. Okay. When we come back, we'll do some more of these. Did we have any questions on this one?
Oh, okay. I love you. Thank you. Have you got that day?
Oh.
Nasty smash?
17 would be similar.
Did a good job.
For 18, how would we start solving that?
18.
Add or subtract 16.
Subtract 16. 49x squared equals negative 8. And then divide both sides by 49. When we take the square root there, what happens?
No solution.
So still isolate it, even if you get the negative, then you can put the no solution at the end. But if we had something like 19, it's already isolated. So if we take the square root of both sides, this one, you'll have to use your calculator. Take the square root of 19. You're going to get a decimal. What is that decimal? 4 point, give me like 3 decimals.
4.35.
4.35, sorry, one more.
8.
So when you write the decimal, write at least 3 decimals. When you get to algebra 2, you actually learn how to simplify your radicals. That's what these are called, the square root. But we're not doing that here. And that would be the same for any of these. So if I were to add 41,
Do you know how to work with the calculator?
and take the square root of both sides, what would that give us?
I think I figured it out. First try.
Repeat that one more time.
Shouldn't have tried to get it blanket.
So as long as you know that's what you're doing, putting it into the calculator, figuring out what that decimal is, then you're good.
How do you like coconut?
I'll let you guys choose. So looking at the remaining ones, which of those do we want to see do, go over, or have questions about?
23.
23, 24.
Where'd you get these?
Sorry.
I'm gonna copy these. Starter 5. Just get it for free.
Okay. Any others? Okay. So for 23, if we divide both sides by 36, if these are whole numbers, take the square root individually. Don't take it all at once. That's not what I meant. Not that they're whole numbers, but if they're perfect squares, like 136 are both perfect squares. What would that be?
10 and 6.
10 and 6.
Plus minus.
But we also want these simplified. So
5-3.
5. What you also could have done is simplified it first. You would have got 25 over 9, and then you could have did the same thing, and you would have got 5 and 3. So either or for that one. Okay. Questions on 23? For 24, what's our first step?
Add 6.
Add 6. We have negative 8x squared equals negative 24. And then divide. Be careful with your negatives. This would become a positive, so we're not going to get no solution. When you take the square root of both sides, what is that? So 3 was what we got when we isolated.
1.732.
Plus or minus 1.7, one more time.
1.732.
32. Okay, questions on that one? 27, how can we start that? So you can do one of two things. Either distribute or get rid of the 3/4 by multiplying or dividing. So that choice is really up to you guys. Do we want to distribute or get rid of it?
Get rid of it.
Okay, so let's multiply by 4 over 3. And then add 17 to both sides. What is that?
20.
24.
24.
25.
There we go. So then if we take the square root of both sides,
5.
plus or minus 5. Are there any other questions you want to see to go over and have questions about?
We can just unload it.
I'm going to give you guys 2 problems that I want you to do. Do those 2, raise your hand so
I'll
you
get
can
you
get it checked. And then afterwards,
Put you
you
on the
can
roster.
either keep working on this, work on the delta math for this, work on missing delta math, work on missing tests, work on
Perhaps.
retake work. But do this first.
You think?
Do number 25 and number 30. So do those 2, raise your hand when you finish,
Pretty good.
and then I'll come around and check them.